Some of the weirdest creatures in Star Wars evolved in total isolation, developing biological traits that seem to defy the natural laws of the galaxy. These species represent the extreme limits of evolution. As explorers pushed into the unknown, they found that these lifeforms didn't just inhabit worlds, but defined them, often serving as the primary obstacle or unexpected guide for those moving through the stars. By exploring both Canon and Legends archives, we find a galaxy where the expansion of civilization was shaped by the existence of these bizarre, alien residents. In the lower levels of Coruscant, entire walls occasionally collapse for no apparent reason. Engineers investigating these failures sometimes discover winding tunnels bored directly through support structures that were designed to last for centuries. The damage does not resemble explosives or machinery. Instead, the interior surfaces appear melted and rehardened, as though the structure itself had been slowly eaten from the inside. The organism responsible is the Duracrete slug, a pale, burrowing lifeform that feeds on the same composite material used to construct the planet-wide city. Rather than living in soil or stone, the creature treats architecture as its natural environment. It moves through buildings by secreting corrosive digestive fluids that break down Duracrete, ferrocrete, and other construction compounds. As the material is processed, the slug excretes the materials through its skin, forming a dense shell that gradually thickens as the animal grows. Urban planners rarely design cities with burrowing organisms that eat the buildings themselves, but some parasites are even more invasive, choosing not to hollow out structures, but to take control of living bodies. A brain beetle crawls quietly across the surface of a fallen creature before slipping beneath the skull through a natural opening. Once inside, the parasite begins interacting directly with the host's nervous system. Legend sources describing unusual parasitic organisms mention the brain beetle as one of the more disturbing examples. These small arthropods survive by inserting themselves into the cranial cavities of larger animals, where they stimulate nerve pathways to control basic motor functions. The host body continues to move as if it were alive. Limbs respond to stimuli, eyes can still track motion, and the creature may even continue walking or feeding depending on how intact the nervous system remains. To an outside observer, the animal appears normal at first glance, which is part of what allows the parasite to survive undetected. Creatures like this blur the line between parasite and puppeteer. Another lifeform survives in a far stranger way, thriving in the harsh machinery that provides water on desert worlds. A vaporator slug coils around the interior piping of a moisture vaporator, absorbing the minerals that accumulate inside the machinery. To settlers depending on these devices for survival, the presence of such an organism can quickly become a serious problem. In Legends descriptions of life on Tatooine, colonists occasionally discover these slugs living inside the equipment used to harvest water from the atmosphere. The animals are drawn to the mineral residue left behind during the vapor condensation process. Soft and flexible tissue allows the slug to move through narrow mechanical channels. Specialized digestive enzymes break down mineral deposits, enabling the creature to extract nutrients directly from the metal-lined pipes. Its feeding slowly erodes the internal surfaces of the machinery. Over time, the slug widens small mineral cavities into hollow chambers large enough for its body to coil inside. Hidden within the sealed structure of the device, it can go unnoticed for months. Parasites hiding inside survival equipment can threaten a community without ever being seen. Larger predators, however, make their presence known immediately, and the next one is huge enough to be ridden across open terrain. A Sleen moves across the desert with a long, muscular body carried on powerful limbs. Its reptilian head sweeps slowly from side to side as it scans the terrain ahead. In legend sources, Sleens are associated with swamp environments, and one trained Sleen named Shadow was kept on Dromund Kaas. The creature can maintain a steady pace over uneven ground, which makes a trained specimen valuable to a handler moving through a difficult landscape, while Sleen remain formidable predators that rely on their strength and speed to overpower prey in open terrain. Their presence in swamp habitats places them among the larger hunters of those environments. Creatures like the Sleen show how even formidable predators can be integrated into daily life on frontier worlds. Some organisms, however, remain impossible to control. and the next one waits motionless beneath the sand for prey to fall into its grasp. A Sarlacc rests beneath the sands of Tatooine, with only its gaping mouth exposed at the surface. Rows of inward curving teeth circle a deep funnel-shaped pit in the desert, while thick, muscular tentacles emerge whenever the sand shifts too close to the edge. The movie Return of the Jedi places the Great Pit of Carkoon as the center of Jabba the Hutt's Theater of Horror, a public execution site built around an organism already waiting below. Luke Skywalker and Han Solo narrowly escaped the pit during Jabba's failed attempt to feed them to the creature. The Sarlacc is a complex organism that has existed since Tatooine's early eras. In Legends lore, it is even capable of a twisted form of telepathy, merging its consciousness with its victims so they remain mentally aware during the centuries under its slow digestion. Most of the Sarlacc's body lies deep beneath the desert floor. Its mouth forms a vertical shaft lined with rows of mucus-covered teeth that point downward, making escape physically impossible once a victim slides past the rim. Beneath the sand, the organism extends a network of roots through the surrounding soil, drawing moisture and nutrients to supplement its diet of flesh. A labyrinthine stomach lined with enzymes breaks down organic matter at a glacial pace. This slow metabolism allows the Sarlacc to survive for thousands of years on little food, making it one of the most efficient and horrifying predators in the Outer Rim. Those crossing the Dune Sea mark Sarlacc pits in their star charts and maps. The sand may conceal a predator that has been waiting in the same spot since the era of the Old Republic. A patch of desert becomes a sentence once cartilage, roots, and digestive slime are waiting underneath it. What follows is a hunter that refuses to stay rooted anywhere, turning sealed transport decks into places where every wall can suddenly matter. A Rathtar drags itself down a narrow corridor with coiling, slime-covered tentacles, reeling victims inward until they disappear into its gaping mouth. These creatures are the embodiment of pure, unthinking hunger. They move using their suction-padded limbs to navigate the ceilings and floors of starships. In the cold metal hallways of a freighter, the sound of a Rathtar is a wet, slapping cadence that signals an inescapable end for anyone it catches. In the film The Force Awakens, Han Solo and Chewbacca attempted to transport 3 captured Rathtars when a containment failure let them loose among armed smugglers and gang enforcers. The Rathtars hunted the mercenaries with relentless, pack-like efficiency. Rathtars have a spherical mass of hyper-dense muscle without a single rigid bone. Thick, sensory-rich tentacles surround the central body, and each limb can grip metal surfaces or crush armor through powerful suction pads. The creature's tentacles coil and tighten around its prey, dragging the victim towards a circular mouth lined with rows of serrated teeth. Stories surrounding the infamous Trilia massacre help build the Rathtar's reputation as the most dangerous cargo in the entire world. During that event, a small group of Rathtars decimated an entire colony in a matter of hours. Despite this, smugglers pay exorbitant prices for these living weapons, using them as final deterrents or status symbols. However, as Han Solo learned, the cost of carrying a Rathtar is often paid in the lives of the crew, as no cage in the galaxy is truly Rathtar-proof once the creature smells food. A ship full of compartments becomes useless when the thing pursuing you can grip every surface at once. After that comes a life form that makes shelter itself the mistake, because the cave ahead is really a throat. An Exogorth holds its enormous mouth open within the hollowed-out shell of an asteroid, waiting for minerals, debris, or a stray starship to fly inside. These silicon-based behemoths are among the largest life forms in the galaxy, capable of growing to lengths of nearly 900 meters. They do not breathe oxygen or require a pressurized atmosphere, thriving instead in the cold vacuum of space. They anchor to the interior of rocky planetoids where they can safely digest the ores of their habitat. To a pilot seeking refuge, the entrance to an Exogorth gullet looks like a jagged cave, but the stone floor is actually a layer of reactive, translucent muscle. In the film The Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo piloted the Millennium Falcon into what appeared to be a gigantic, hollow asteroid while escaping a relentless Imperial blockade, only to discover that the cavern walls were part of a living predator. Their skin is thick enough to withstand the bombardment of micrometeoroids and the intense radiation of deep space. A circular opening ringed with massive, calcified teeth leads into digestive chambers where powerful acids break down raw minerals and ship hulls alike. Lacking a traditional respiratory system, it breathes by absorbing stellar winds through its skin, turning solar energy into the chemical fuel needed to drive its massive muscles. In the Anahuac system and the Hoth asteroid belt, the space slug remains the ultimate apex predator of the void. In the vacuum of space, even the terrain can be alive and hungry. A pilot looking for cover can land inside something older, softer, and far more patient than stone. Smaller parasites follow next, and they do not need an asteroid when a power line will do. The Mynock is a silicon-based parasite that breathes electrical current and survives the vacuum of deep space by metabolizing starship fuel. It exists in a state of non-stop hunger for raw energy, making it the primary menace of long-haul freighter pilots and deep space explorers. To a Mynock, a light freighter is a floating banquet of high-voltage power lines and fusion reactor leakage. In the canon film The Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo and Princess Leia discovered an infestation of these creatures, which highlighted the Mynock's most problematic trait: its ability to latch onto a hull and remain undetected while it systematically drains the ship's reserves. In swarms, a single Mynock is rarely the issue, but a dozen or more will converge on a ship's power conduits, which can lead to engine failure or the total breakdown of life support systems. Its biology departs from most vacuum life in one crucial way. It breathes by absorbing ions and electrical particles directly through its skin and its specialized feeding mouth. This mouth functions as a biological ground wire. Once it seals against a power cable or a ship's hull, it creates a closed circuit, letting the Mynock siphon energy directly into its own nervous system. Furthermore, their wings are not used for flight, but act as solar sails and thermal radiators to regulate internal temperature. The danger of the Mynock is its rapid reproductive cycle when exposed to high-energy environments. If a Mynock manages to get inside a ship's engineering deck, it can split into two separate organisms within hours by overfeeding on the ship's reactor. To remove them, crews often have to use high-intensity ultraviolet light or manual scrapers, as the Mynock's grip is chemically reinforced to withstand hyperspace travel. Out in vacuum, even a minor parasite can strip a vessel down to failing systems. Another survivor prefers rot, sludge, and the place's maintenance crews hate to inspect. Most famously known as the trash monster of the Death Star, the Dianoga is a highly adaptable survivor found in sewers, garbage compactors, and toxic swamps across the galaxy. The Dianoga is a master of camouflage, possessing a translucent gelatinous body that takes on the color and texture of the sludge it inhabits. This cephalopod-like scavenger has a hydroskeletal frame and a single retractable sensory stalk that can rotate 360 degrees. It can grow up to 10 meters in length, while hiding in a pool of waste only a few meters deep. In the canon film A New Hope, Luke Skywalker was nearly drowned by a Dianoga residing in the Death Star's trash compactor. The creature was later identified in the canon short story The Baptist as Omi, a rare, semi-sentient member of the species. Omi possessed a crude connection to the Force, viewing the encounter with Luke as a spiritual event rather than a simple predatory attack. What sets the Dianoga apart is its biological adaptability to toxicity. It grows in environments that would be lethal to almost any other organism, including heavy metal runoff, raw sewage, and radioactive waste. Its skin is coated in a specialized mucus that neutralizes most industrial chemicals, so it can consume bacteria and organic matter found in garbage without suffering poisoning. The Dianoga pulls water through its body, moving silently without creating ripples on the surface. Its tentacles are lined with sensory pits that detect minute pressure waves, meaning it can hear the heartbeat of a creature standing by its pool. For maintenance crews, the only sign of its presence is often the faint, rhythmic thumping of its heart against the pipes. Beneath floating garbage and chemical runoff, an eye on a stalk can keep an entire pool under watch. At a glance, the following creature appears harmless, but some birds in this galaxy trail stranger currents than any predator does. The Convor is a small, owl-like avian that occupies a unique intersection between natural biology and cosmic mysticism. While they are physically native to worlds like Atollon and the moon of Waska, their significance comes from their role as spiritual barometers. A common freighter pilot sees a Convor as a feathered predator with a curved beak and a distinctive hoot. Force-sensitive observers often read far more into their presence. They're treated as manifestations of destiny, specifically tied to the Daughter, a powerful embodiment of the light side from the realm of Mortis. Morai, the most notable individual of the species, has shadowed Ahsoka Tano for decades. Morai's behavior defies standard avian ecology. she does not hunt for sustenance or seek out mates. Instead, she appears at pivotal historical junctures, acting as a silent witness to the tides of the Force. Mirai was present during the Siege of Malachor and was even seen perched near the entrance to the World Between Worlds, a mystical dimension that exists outside of normal time and space. Physically, convoys are remarkably silent. They have a broad wingspan and gold-rimmed eyes that are highly effective at tracking movement in low-light environments. Their calls and appearances have been interpreted by some Force-sensitive observers as signs that important events are unfolding around them. While standard convoys on Waska might feed on small lizards, Morai's repeated appearances around major Force events makes her behavior difficult to explain through ordinary animal habits alone. Morai makes an ordinary silhouette carry the weight of prophecy. The next organism strips away free will altogether and leaves a body moving on borrowed commands. The Geonosian brainworm represents a horrific fusion of parasitic biology and hive mind necromancy. Unlike typical parasites that only consume nutrients, these pale, segmented invertebrates seek total neural control. They serve as the physical extensions of a Geonosian queen's will, allowing her to project command across vast distances. Its biology transforms a standard medical infection into a state of absolute mental and physical enslavement. As seen in the canon animated series The Clone Wars, the brainworm does not require a living host. By burrowing into a cadaver and stimulating the brainstem with electrical impulses, the parasite can reanimate the deceased. These undead hosts, whether Geonosian or clone trooper, exhibit a distinctive jerky gait as the worm manually overrides the motor cortex, telepathically linked to a central queen. An infested squad moves with a singular, terrifying coordination, making them far more lethal than standard mindless ghouls. The infection process is a showcase of invasive evolution. The worm typically enters a sleeping or restrained host through the nasal cavity, maneuvering towards the base of the skull. Once positioned, it deploys microscopic hook nodes to anchor itself directly into the host's central nervous system. It then secretes a cocktail of neuroinhibitors that paralyze the host's conscious mind while keeping the autonomic functions and motor skills fully operational. The result is a passenger effect in which the victim remains aware but possesses zero control over their actions, even as their body is forced to fire on allies or sabotage equipment. The only reliable defense against this biological takeover is extreme cold. Having evolved in the sweltering subterranean heat of Geonosis, the brainworm's cellular membranes are highly susceptible to thermal shock. Sub-zero temperatures induce immediate paralysis in the parasite, forcing it to relinquish its neural grip. Without this thermal vulnerability, the brainworm would be an unstoppable agent of hive expansion, capable of hollowing out an entire military force from the inside out. Parasitic rule becomes military doctrine when a queen can march the dead through borrowed flesh. This next one is worse for a different reason. It turns pain into part of the protection. The Orbalisk is a rare Force-sensitive parasite that transforms into armor. Primarily found on the moon of Duxin, these hard-shelled mollusks are not interested in blood or tissue. They want the specific flavor of a person's connection to the Force. For a Sith Lord, an infestation of Orbalisks is both a crowning achievement and a biological prison. The creatures attach themselves to the skin and begin to multiply rapidly, covering the host in overlapping organic plate mail that defies standard physics. In the Darth Bane trilogy of Legends continuity, the Orbalisk becomes the defining feature of Bane's physical presence. After being attacked by the parasites in a Sith tomb, Bane discovered that the creatures provided him with a nearly perfect defense. An Orbalisk's shell is naturally resistant to lightsaber blades. However, this protection comes at a horrific cost. The Orbalisks are not passive creatures. They inject a constant stream of adrenaline and life-prolonging chemicals into the host to keep them in a perpetual state of agony and fury. The spike in negative emotion generates an enormous feed of dark side energy, which the Orbalisks then consume to fuel their own rapid growth. Once an Orbalisk has latched itself onto a host, it cannot be removed through traditional surgery. If the parasite detects a threat to its attachment, it releases a concentrated dose of neurotoxin into the host's bloodstream. This toxin is so potent that it can kill even a powerful Force user in seconds. Orbalisks also expand until they cover every inch of the body, including the face and joints, threatening to suffocate the host unless they are carefully managed or stunted through specialized Sith alchemy. Protection stops feeling like a gift when the shell on your skin is alive and feeding on your worst impulses. After that comes a hunter that does not need tracks, scent, or open ground to find what it wants. The Vornskr is a canine-like apex predator that has weaponized the Force into a primary sensory organ for tracking prey. This creature exists in a state of constant attunement to the ripples caused by living minds. Native to the planet Myrkr, this creature has evolved in a biological arms race against the Ysalamiri, the Force-nullifying lizards. In the Thrawn trilogy from the Legends timeline, the Vornskr was one of the few creatures that can truly unnerve a Jedi. When Luke Skywalker was stranded in the forests of Myrkr, he found that his usual methods of stealth were useless. Its unusual adaptation lies in specialized neural architecture. A cluster of Force-sensitive cells within the brain functions like a biological receiver. This organ is tuned specifically to the signatures of Force users, which the Vornskr perceives as a hunger-inducing stimulus. Jedi and Sith have a higher concentration of Force energy, so they shine like beacons to the predator, often provoking it into a frenzy. Physically, the Vornskr is a sleek, quadrupedal mammal with a whip-like tail. Its coat is dark and coarse, allowing it to blend into the shadows of the olbio trees. However, its most striking feature is its aggression. Unlike most animals that hunt for food, Vornskrs often attack for the sport of the Force chase, even when they're not hungry. This erratic violence made them ideal tools for Grand Admiral Thrawn, who recognized that their instincts could locate Jedi targets otherwise invisible to Imperial sensors. The Vornskr's relationship with its environment is a perfect example of coevolution. Vornskrs are such effective Force trackers that their primary prey, the Ysalamiri, evolved the ability to project bubbles of Force neutrality. This creates a dead zone on Myrkr where the Vornskr is essentially blinded if its prey remains within the protective field. On Myrkr, being strong in the Force can make you easier to stalk, not safer. The creature after it goes one step further by removing itself from that entire sensory web. The Taozin is a huge invertebrate that exists as a black hole in the Force, rendering it and anyone near it completely undetectable to psychic senses. While many creatures use camouflage to hide from the eye, the Taozin uses a form of metabiological stealth to hide from the soul. Native to the lightless caverns of the Outer Rim, this giant centipede-like organism has evolved a translucent exoskeleton that refracts both light and Force energy, making it a literal ghost in the machinery of the universe. Dozens of pairs of hooked legs drive the Taozin forward with unsettling speed. Its body is elongated and serpentine, often reaching lengths of over 20 meters. In addition to its Force-shrouding abilities, it is a formidable physical hunter. It produces a thick, adhesive silk from glands near its mandibles, which it uses to ensnare prey in transparent webs. The web is as invisible to the Force as the creature, so Jedi often find themselves entangled in a trap they never felt coming. The Taozin is a walking piece of anti-Force technology. Some organisms do not camouflage their bodies so much as erase their presence from the galaxy's deepest signal. The following creature is impossible to miss, a storm dweller whose scale makes freighters look disposable. The Summa-verminoth is a titanic spacefaring predator that lives in the treacherous maelstrom surrounding Kessel. It has the ability to project lethal mental hallucinations in the minds of Starship crews. As seen in the canon film Solo: A Star Wars Story, the Summa-verminoth doesn't have a traditional skeletal structure. Its body is surrounded by a cloud of electrified gas and debris, which manipulates it using its large tentacles to pull ships towards its central maw. The creature's scale and sudden movement through the storm can overwhelm pilots before they have time to react. Its biology is rooted in the Akkadi's maelstrom itself. It feeds on the intense radiation and energy found within the rift. It does not eat in the traditional sense. It absorbs the raw energy of the maelstrom through its skin. Its tentacles are tipped with specialized suction claws that can crush durasteel hulls, while the limbs themselves function as sensory feelers within the storm, which makes the creature a living navigational hazard. In the maelstrom, the thing reaching for your hull is the only part you can actually see. After that comes a life form that spreads like rot and thinks like a colony. A Drengir pushes a thorny vine through the soft soil, its body expanding like an invasive weed that refuses to die. The creature does not have a heart or a brain in the traditional sense. It is a mass of sentient vegetation that views all meat-based life as spoil food waiting to be harvested. During the era of the High Republic, the Jedi Order encountered the Drengir as one of the greatest threats to the frontier. These plant-based monsters were originally trapped in stasis by the ancient Sith, but they were inadvertently awakened, leading to an infestation that threatened entire star systems. Unlike a simple beast, the Drengir act with collective hunger, leaving lush worlds into gray, thorny graveyards. They sit on the razor's edge between a mindless fungus and an evil intelligence. The Drengir is a chaotic tangle of roots, thorns, and hidden mouths. They have a central root mind but can move through individual pods that sprout from the ground. Their skin is a thick, bark-like hide that is highly resistant to lightsabers and blaster fire. Cutting a Drengir often just results in two separate pieces of the plant growing back into two separate creatures. They communicate through a shared consciousness that allows them to coordinate attacks across a battlefield, using vine limbs to trap and pull victims into the dark, thorny mass of their central bodies. The Drengir's ability to corrupt other life forms makes them especially difficult to contain. They can extend mind vines that tap into the nervous systems of other creatures, forcing them to do the hive's bidding. To the Drengir, the galaxy is a garden that has grown out of control, and they are the gardeners who come to prune the meat from the stars. They are nearly impossible to eradicate because even a single surviving seed can restart an infestation. For the Jedi of the High Republic, fighting them was not a war of blasters, but a struggle against an unstoppable biological rot that viewed the entire galaxy as a meal. A world can stop feeling habitable once those roots take hold. The next creature is gentler, but no less unsettling, because it crossed the stars before anyone built an engine. The Purrgil is a massive, semi-sentient spacefaring creature that bridges the gap between biological life and interstellar travel. Resembling a cross between a whale and a cephalopod, these behemoths thrive in the vacuum of space, using their large fins and 4 powerful tentacles to maneuver through the stars. While most life forms require pressurized hulls and life support, the Purrgil's physiology is evolved for the void. Their most distinctive adaptation is their diet. They consume Clauson-36, a rare gas found in planetary nebulae. This gas reacts within specialized internal organs to generate the energy required for natural hyperspace travel, a process called simu-tunneling. In the canon animated series Star Wars Rebels, the Purrgil proved their intelligence when Ezra Bridger used a force bond to coordinate a pod of them against the Imperial 7th Fleet. By wrapping their tentacles around Star Destroyers, they dragged entire vessels into hyperspace. This suggests they do not merely blink through space, but have a sophisticated understanding of hyperspace lanes. In fact, many historians believe that the earliest sentient species developed hyperdrive technology by studying Purrgil migration patterns, mapping the galaxy's highways based on where these massive creatures naturally travel to feed. Despite their size, Purrgil are generally peaceful unless provoked or interrupted during their feeding cycles. Their bodies are covered in a thick, leathery hide that can withstand the radiation of deep space, and their eyes glow with a soft bioluminescence that helps them navigate dark nebulae. However, they are a notorious hazard to commercial shipping. Their tendency to drift into established hyperspace lanes has caused countless collisions. To the average pirate, they are a pest. To the Jedi, they are a profound example of how the Force binds all life, even in the cold reaches of the vacuum. Living bodies can do what Navi computers do, and they do it by instinct. What follows presence drops all softness and wonder. It arrives like a fault in reality itself. The Starweird is a semi-corporeal manifestation of pure malevolence that haunts the vacuum of deep space and derelict vessels. Described in Legends material as space ghosts, these entities are non-sentient but highly predatory. Physically, they appear as tall, gaunt humanoids with skeletal features, elongated talons, and white hair that drifts as if submerged in water. Their defining trait is selective intangibility. A Starweird exists partially out of phase with normal reality, allowing blaster bolts and physical strikes to pass through its form without causing damage. The most terrifying aspect of a Starweird is its psychic scream. Because sound cannot travel in a vacuum, the entity projects a telepathic shriek directly into the minds of its prey. This scream is not just a sound, but a mental assault that induces paralyzing dread. It can cause immediate physiological collapse or cardiac arrest in non-Force sensitives. However, Starweirds reserve a unique, instinctual hatred for those who can touch the Force. One will often ignore a ship's entire crew to focus exclusively on a Jedi or a Sith, entering a state of hyper-aggressive frenzy until the Force-sensitive individual is neutralized. The origin of these creatures remains a mystery. Some xenotheorists suggest they are glitches in the Force, while others believe they are remnants of ancient dark side experiments. They do not eat, breathe, or sleep. They only drift through the void, waiting for the presence of a sentient mind to trigger their hunting instinct. Encountering a Starweird is often a death sentence for spacers. By the time the sudden chilling ringing begins in their minds, the entity has already phased through the hull, ready to tear through both flesh and spirit. Deep space turns malignant when a thing can ignore your hull and scream straight into your mind. Only one familiar creature sits above it, because small size means nothing when biology can shut the Force off. The Ysalamiri is a small, furry lizard native to the trees of the planet Murker, possessing a biological adaptation that defies the laws of the galaxy. Unlike almost every other living thing, the Ysalamiri does not just exist within the Force, it repels it. To survive the predatory Vornskrs, which hunt by sensing the Force signatures of their prey, the Ysalamiri evolved the ability to project a Force-neutral bubble. Within this radius, the Force simply ceases to function. This makes the creature one of the most effective biological defenses against Force users, as it effectively severs their connection to the cosmic energy field. Grand Admiral Thrawn famously weaponized this biology during his campaign against the New Republic. By mounting Ysalamiri on specialized nutrient frames, he could carry the creatures into battle, creating a mobile dead zone that rendered Jedi like Luke Skywalker powerless. In a large enough group, multiple Ysalamiri can overlap their bubbles to create massive voids in the Force spanning several kilometers. For a Jedi, entering this field is a traumatic experience described as a sudden crushing sensory deprivation, leaving them physically vulnerable and mentally disoriented. The strangeness of the Ysalamiri's metabolism is so extreme that it actually pushes back against the Force. More than a simple mental block, it is a physical displacement of the Force's presence. Because they are sedentary and spend their lives firmly anchored to the mineral-rich bark of Murker's trees, they are difficult to remove without killing them. However, their utility as a tactical asset makes them one of the most dangerous non-predatory animals in existence. In a galaxy governed by mystical energy, the most powerful creature is the one that can make that energy vanish. A branch on Murker can become a dead zone for the most powerful mystics in the galaxy, and even that defense looks gentle beside what comes next, because the final predator doesn't silence the Force, it eats it. Introduced in the High Republic era, the Nameless are the apex predators of the Jedi Order. Also known as the Shri Karai, or Eaters of the Force, these pale, multi-limbed horrors do not hunt for meat. They feed exclusively on the Force energy within living beings. When a Nameless enters the vicinity of a Force sensitive, it projects an aura of pure, unadulterated terror that causes the victim's connection to the Force to fracture. This results in horrific hallucinations and the loss of all Force-derived abilities, leaving even the most powerful Jedi Masters cowering and helpless. The feeding process is hellish. As the creature consumes the victim's inner light, the host undergoes a rapid calcification process. Once the Force energy is completely drained, the victim is reduced to a brittle, gray husk, a statue of ash that crumbles into dust at the slightest touch. There is no known biological defense against this consumption. The Nameless are eyeless and appear to see the galaxy through the vibrations and signatures of the Force itself, making them impossible to hide from for anyone with even a slight Force sensitivity. The Nameless become even more unsettling because of their origin and their relationship to the dark side. While they appear monstrous, they are not necessarily evil in a moral sense. They are a natural check on the Force, existing as a void that must be filled. They were used by the Nihil Marauders to devastating effect, nearly breaking the Jedi Order during its golden age. The discovery of the Nameless shattered the Jedi's perception of themselves as invincible guardians. The very power they relied upon was exactly what made them the perfect prey. However, these creatures aren't the only things that can threaten life in the galaxy. Even traveling between worlds can be dangerous, which is why another ranking looks at the Star Wars ships that could actually support daily life, measuring space, safety, mobility, and long-term comfort instead of combat power. And for those more interested in the people who encountered creatures like these, another chronology traces the Jedi's origins thousands of years before the Republic.